Huh. The room is empty. Returning home from my father-in-law's hospital, I was stunned to see my room with not a single piece of furniture left. Not even a pencil remained when I entered the room. Who could have? Though I knew who the culprit was, I murmured. Immediately after, that very culprit spoke up. It was messy, so I cleaned it up for you. Mary thought. Leaning against the door and looking at me was my mother-in-law. Mary, with a very malicious smile on her face. Parasites should leave. I knew she disliked me, but I didn't deserve to be treated that way. I had been patient for the sake of my husband, Mike, but I've reached my limit now. All right. I replied and left my home. For now, I'll go to a hotel. And then, I'll discuss what to do next. After contacting Mike, I stretched broadly. My mood was incredibly light. All right, let's cut everything off. I was excited about what was to come. My name is Daisy. I'm a 35-year-old career woman. I married Mike 5 years ago, and now I live with his family. My husband, Mike, is a very kind person. There's not a day I don't feel glad to have married him. We met at the company. We were assigned to the same department as newcomers. And helping each other with work was the start of it all. To be frank, Mike isn't exactly good at his job. Initially, my impression of Mike wasn't great. However, as we worked together, my perception changed. Mike was very good at supporting others. He would help a coworker staying late without complaint and genuinely rejoice in their success. As I watched Mike, I gradually became attracted to him. I was the one who asked him out first, and I confessed my feelings. I was also the one who proposed. I was more nervous then than at any business meetings. At first, I was worried he might not like my taking charge. But Mike said that's what he found attractive about me. Not only is Mike kind, but he also has a strong core. He usually lets me make decisions, but when it matters, he stands firm. That's why I want to protect Mike with all I've got, and I hope we can support each other. So, when we were presented with the condition of living with his parents for marriage, I accepted without a frown. Mike was worried, but if that's what it took to marry him, I thought it was a small price to pay. However, my relationship with my in-laws is anything but good. They dislike me for continuing to work after marriage and often throw snide remarks and unreasonable demands my way. Mike defends me every time, which my in-laws don't find amusing. What is this? What do you mean? It's breakfast. I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning to prepare breakfast and lunch for everyone. That day's breakfast menu was bread and soup, with sides of ham and omelette, and a spinach salad. I think the menu for breakfast is fine, but Mary found fault with it. Such a salty menu. Are you trying to kill us? No, that was not my intention. Originally, it was my in-laws who said that a traditional meal with 1 soup and 3 dishes is basic for breakfast, and they wouldn't eat anything other than American food. I've been conscious of making the flavors mild. I've explained this many times, but Mary refuses to be satisfied. Oh, scary. So, you're bullying the elderly, huh? Elderly. Stepmom, Mary, you're only 55 years old, right? Quiet. Just get on with preparing the meal. Mary just turned 55. She had Mike when she was 20, and she's always been proud of that. It seems she's always used her youth to assert dominance. And Mike said she doesn't have any mom friends. However, she believes they are just jealous of her youth. Lunchboxes again? I hate pre-made food. A daughter-in-law should come back at noon to take care of her in-laws' meals. That's just common sense, right? I replied, fed up with the daily exchanges. But I have work, you know. Plus, I prepare lunch every morning, don't I? After being criticized for being lazy when I made meals in advance, I've made sure to prepare everything fresh on the day. I was criticized in the same way when I served leftovers, so from then on, I made sure to eat the leftovers myself. Such a lazy daughter-in-law, really troubling. My mother-in-law said this and went to the living room. I felt relieved to be freed and hurried to prepare the meal. Dinner was delicious, thanks Daisy. Thank you. While Mike smiles and enjoys his meal, the snide remarks from my in-laws don't come flying. Mike knows this and tries to stay with me as much as possible. However, our work doesn't always end at the same time. My in-laws seize these moments to throw their sarcasm at me. Hey, there's a pile of laundry. Get on it. But that's the laundry you've been piling up, isn't it? It's because you don't pay enough attention. I wanted to scream at this damn old man. But the presence of Mike has always allowed me to hold back. Even with Mike around, my in-laws would sometimes make snide remarks. This time it was about children. The daughter-in-law next door just had her third child. Wonder when we'll have grandchildren. Exactly, when will we get an heir? We need a boy first. Smirking, my in-laws looked at us. Then Mike, smiling, countered. I don't want to put any more burden on our main pillar right now. So kids are still a bit ahead in the future. What are you talking about? You're the main pillar. Eh? Mike's statement was true, but my father-in-law didn't take it seriously. Even so, I was very happy that Mike said that to protect me from my in-laws. When I was your age, Mike was already in middle school. How long are you going to make us wait? Mike says it's too early, and it's going to be a while. If you keep saying that, I'll have you two divorced. Divorce requires the consent of both parties, you know? My strong-willed responses left my mother-in-law stomping her feet in frustration. Even so, she never learned and kept making snide remarks, which I came to brush off with disdain. Hey, Mike, we haven't received this month's living expenses from your dad, have we? Eh? Really? I'll check it out. One day, after realizing that the living expenses from my father-in-law hadn't been deposited upon checking the bank statement, I asked Mike to confirm. Then, we received a shocking response from my father-in-law. You always live off the money Mike earns. Include your wife's salary in the living expenses too. But the living expenses have been coming out of Daisy's salary. I've been saving mine. That can't be right. It's impossible for a wife to earn more than her husband. No matter how much we explained. My father-in-law was convinced that Mike earned more, and insisted that my salary couldn't be that significant. It was infuriating, but it wasn't like I wanted to boast about having a higher salary. Besides, the living expenses we received from my in-laws were under $100 a month. It wasn't even enough to cover our food expenses. Originally, when we agreed to live together, my father-in-law, who opposed paying all the expenses by saying, "Are you trying to take over the house?" came up with this compromise. So, we wouldn't be troubled even without it. It's fine. I'll cover it from my side. But then, you'll have less to spend. I'll cover it from my side. Mike said apologetically, but I smiled brightly. It's okay. I've been promoted starting the month after next. So, my salary will go up. Wow. Congratulations. You've been working hard. Mike clapped, genuinely happy for me. This is what I love about Mike. His praise alone makes me forget the unpleasant daily occurrences. So, let's continue saving your salary as we've been doing. Daisy. Thank you. Seeing Mike's relieved expression made me feel at ease too. From then on, we took on all the living expenses ourselves. That's when we started noticing my in-laws' reckless spending. While it irritated me to see them splurging on branded items, The days became superficially peaceful as they started going on trips and outings more frequently. But that peace didn't last long. I've been told I have cancer. I'm going to be hospitalized. One day, John suddenly called Mike with this news. We rushed to the hospital, only to find my father-in-law grinning and chatting with a female nurse. "John, Mary will be mad at you." "Shh, you're here." After throwing the nurse a lifeline, she bowed lightly and left. Mike, completely dismayed by his father's behavior, then asked, "What do you mean by cancer?" "It's early stage and still small. So they say it can be managed with surgery or chemotherapy." "I see, that's good, at least." Regardless of how he treated me, to Mike, this was his blood-related father. Seeing Mike relieved even slightly by his father's words, I let out a sigh of relief. Then, my mother-in-law returned to the room with the doctor. "Oh, you guys are here?" Of course, we'd be worried after such a sudden call. "Well, it's nothing serious." "Oh, yes." She then rummaged through her bag, pausing mid-sentence, and handed over a document. It was a letter detailing the estimated costs for hospitalization and surgery. "Take care of this, will you?" "What?" "You're going to complain, even though you're just a daughter-in-law. Who do you think has been supporting you all this time?" I wanted to say that I've been the one supporting us since we got married. I had to desperately restrain myself from saying it. However, my silence seemed to be misunderstood by Mary as conceding defeat. With a triumphant look, she began to speak loudly as if delivering a speech. "With Mike's earnings, you surely can't say you can't pay. Saving is also a respectable job for a wife." Sigh. I didn't even feel like arguing anymore and just gave a vague reply. After that, my father-in-law's hospital stay dragged on. Just when I thought there was no progress on the surgery, it turned out he was refusing it. The reason was that he found hospital life comfortable. The hospital where John was admitted is famous around here, even celebrities get admitted there. Therefore, the hospital fees are higher than others. In the hospital, my father-in-law enjoyed being kindly taken care of by beautiful nurses and eating delicious food. He got so accustomed to doing whatever he liked. While just lying down that he hardly agreed to sign the consent form for surgery. "We need to make a decision soon." "Yes, I understand, I'm sorry." I had come to collect the laundry and apologized after the doctor mentioned this. We couldn't leave my father-in-law to enjoy his hotel stay at the hospital forever. The hospital fees were piling up. I decided to consult with Mike about this tonight. With that thought, I took the laundry home, started the washing machine, and then went back to my room. The room is empty. Returning home from my father-in-law's hospital, I was stunned to see my room with not a single piece of furniture left. Not even a pencil remained when I entered the room. Who could have? Though I knew who the culprit was, I murmured. Immediately after, that very culprit spoke up. "It was messy, so I cleaned it up for you." Mary. Leaning against the door and looking at me was Mary, with a very malicious smile on her face. Parasites should leave. I knew she disliked me, but I didn't deserve to be treated that way. I had been patient for the sake of Mike, but I've reached my limit now. "All right," I cheerfully replied and left my home. "For now, I'll go to a hotel. And then, I'll discuss what to do next with Mike." After contacting Mike, I stretched broadly. My mood was incredibly light. "All right, let's cut everything off." I was excited about what was to come. Mike met up with me immediately after work. When I shared my plan, he agreed with it. "I'm really sorry about my parents. We've put you through a lot. Let's cut ties with them." Hearing Mike say that, I felt relieved. Though I tried not to mind, the stress was undeniable. And knowing it would be gone brought peace of mind. Mike would return home alone that day. And we planned to meet up as if nothing happened the next day. I spent the night in a business hotel and called a real estate agent. "Excuse me, about the house we bought recently." "Yes, can we move in immediately?" "Yes, that's fine. Then, I'll come to pick up the keys tomorrow." "Thank you very much." Mike and I had actually bought a house 2 years prior. Despite the incessant demands for grandchildren from my in-laws, we had decided not to have children after discussing it. Instead, we saved money to buy a holiday home for relaxation. By chance, the handover was scheduled for the following weekend, so they were able to accommodate us immediately. I informed Mike that the house was ready to move into, and that night, I fell asleep. The next day, after receiving the keys from the real estate agent, I entered our new home. It was a fully customized house built to our specifications. The study, bedroom, and kitchen all incorporated our wishes. So this will be our home from now on. Feeling excited, I lay sprawled out in the empty living room. Just then, Mike called, so I left the house to go shopping for furniture and other necessities. The refrigerator and other appliances were already arranged to be delivered on the originally planned weekend, but we hadn't decided on the furniture yet. Wanting to take our time, we ended up purchasing the furniture we had our eyes on, and brought back only the mattress by ourselves. By the weekend, furniture and appliances started pouring into our new home. It was around that time when Mike received a call. It's Mom. A call from Mike's mother showed up on his smartphone. As Mike answered the phone next to me, I could hear his mother's voice loud enough that it almost hurt my ears. "Mike. Where are you?" She seemed completely panicked, her frantic concern audible through the phone. Mike listened silently before responding nonchalantly. "Me and Daisy, we're not coming back." "What? Why?" She sounded truly baffled. Mike answered her calmly. "Both of you, what do you think of my wife? Daisy is important to me. She's the person I swore to make happy for the rest of my life." You could hear her gasping for breath at Mike's words. Mike rarely gets angry, but when he does, he talks calmly, a habit of his. It seemed she finally realized Mike was seriously angry. "Mike. All those snide remarks and unreasonable demands. Did you think I wasn't aware? But I've had enough. We're cutting ties for good." The moment Mike clearly stated they were cutting ties, a wail like a death knell could be heard from the other end. Mike ignored her reaction and hung up the phone. "Daisy, I'm really sorry." "No, Mike, you've always protected me." Mike smiled apologetically at my words. I had been putting up with it because I didn't want to cause Mike any distress. But it seemed he felt the same way. And he had been planning to separate from his parents soon regardless of this incident. Hearing this made me love Mike even more. When I told him so, Mike smiled very happily. It was about 2 weeks later when I received a call from my mother-in-law. "What? You haven't paid for your father's hospital fees?" "Huh?" I was taken aback by her opening remarks. Who in the world pays the hospital bills for someone they've cut ties with? "We're not doing that anymore. Your father's wallet is empty, and the laundry is piling up. Come home quickly." It seemed she had forgotten that Mike had clearly declared their estrangement not long ago. I decided to ask her plainly. "But why would we assist someone we've cut ties with?" "That's it. I don't know how you did it. But you've clearly brainwashed my precious son. Come back right now. I'll forgive you if you prostrate yourself." Apparently, Mary believed that I had coerced Mike into saying those things. I sighed and decided to tell her the truth. We're already living in our new home. And we're planning to change our phone numbers next week. Don't you believe your own son's words? It's because you said something unnecessary. I don't need you, just send Mike back. Don't you dare use his earnings. Like they seem to believe Mike earned more than I did. I explained the situation to her calmly. Didn't Mike tell you? He started his own business, so now I'm the one who earns more. What? Actually, Mike had always had a business idea he wanted to pursue. It was work in the welfare sector, aimed at helping people. Knowing this, I supported him. And just 6 months ago, everything finally started to fall into place, and he launched his business. I was secretly worried whether Mike, who lacks a competitive spirit, could handle running a business. However, many talented people, drawn to Mike's personality, came together to support him and compensate for his shortcomings. As a result, although it's just the beginning, Mike's business is gradually increasing its profits. As I've said many times before, I was the one paying for the living expenses, hospital bills, and even your father's allowance. That's a lie. Would you like us to send you our payslips then? Hearing me go that far, Mary finally seemed to believe my words. And then, she started mumbling something over the phone. Is there anything else you need? Oh, no. Well, can you come back? Excuse me? I couldn't comprehend what she suddenly asked. Then, the mother-in-law began to talk more freely. Look, this house is big. And Mike has just started his business. It must be hard, right? I can help out where I can. Sigh. Right. Let's all live together and help each other out like before. Like before? I repeated her last words. Essentially, my mother-in-law wanted us to come back and continue working like servants, doing household chores while working ourselves to the bone, just as before. I'd like to see someone who would agree to that. No, thank you. We didn't like our life before, that's why Mike and I are in this situation. But, you know, if we both make an effort to meet halfway. Meet halfway? You've never tried to meet us halfway even once. She continued to insist over the phone that it was different. That's not what she meant. I couldn't understand what was supposedly different. And then, she had the audacity to say, then, even if you don't come back, I'll forgive you. So, could you at least pay for your father's hospital bills, please? No, thanks. What? I wondered why she thought I would agree after that conversation. I sighed in exasperation. Cutting ties means ending all connections. So, regardless of what you say, we won't be providing any more support. How could you? Then, let me speak to Mike at least. I glanced at Mike, who was in the same room. Since the conversation was on speaker from the start, he had heard everything. Mike shook his head. I nodded in response and told her. Mike has been listening to the entire conversation. He doesn't want to talk. What? She kept repeating why over and over, clearly not understanding the situation. I briefly said, goodbye, and hung up the phone. She called back immediately, but I ignored it. Let's not answer anymore. Yeah, that sounds like an idea. I responded and then set our phones to block my in-laws' numbers. Mike did the same. We thought that was the end of it, but the persistence of my in-laws was beyond our imagination. A few weeks later, they showed up at our new home. Hey. Won't you open up? Let's talk it over. You're being too forceful. While my parents-in-law were saying whatever they pleased and repeatedly knocking on the door, I decided to respond through the intercom to avoid bothering the neighbors. How did you find out where we live? We hired a detective, of course. You made us spend unnecessary money. Hearing John shout, I let out a sigh. Normally, if someone says they're cutting ties and doesn't tell you their new address, you wouldn't try to find them. The fact that they hired a detective to find us and confront us like this shows they haven't reflected at all. I kept my voice as calm as possible and responded coldly. Is that so? I thought this conversation was over. It's your fault I had to be discharged. Give me money. Let me be admitted again. You were discharged because you continued to refuse surgery, right? I heard the chemotherapy has already been completed. Actually, a few days ago, the hospital contacted Mike. It seems my father-in-law had been refusing surgery and had been delinquent in paying the hospital bills. He also caused trouble by harassing female nurses. Seeing Mike so exhausted and distressed was really pitiable. But it seems my father-in-law hasn't reflected at all, as he's ranting and raving from the other side of the intercom. It's all your fault. If you have money, why didn't you say so? I allowed you to work, despite you being just a wife. I never asked for your permission. What an ungrateful wife. I'll re-educate you. Come out. No thank you. My response made my father-in-law even angrier, his face turning beet red. Meanwhile, Mary, smirking beside him, tried to speak to me. Look, Daisy. We both had some misunderstandings. Let's forget about everything up until now, shall we? Her voice sounded humble, but her expression oozed unwarranted confidence that I would forgive her. I sighed and responded. Mary, the phrase, let's forget about it, is meant to be used by those who have suffered a loss, not by the offender. Are you saying we're at fault? After I've humbled myself, you're taking advantage of it. Where's Mike? I'll just take him back with me. Revealing her true intentions, I couldn't help but laugh. I knew why they had shown up at our house today. I had heard rumors from friends living nearby. I decided to state it plainly. Both of you came here to beg for money today, didn't you? Is that an appropriate attitude? Begging? We're here to demand the money you owe us. John, that's what you call begging. I couldn't help but laugh out loud in front of the intercom. My laughter only fueled John's anger even more. But at that moment, none of that mattered to me. I told him plainly. John, you're being sued by the nurse, aren't you? It's not acceptable nowadays to touch or say inappropriate things to someone who is not your spouse. How do you know about that? No, it's different. She was the one coming on to me. In fact, my father-in-law was sued by the hospital for demanding excessive services from a nurse. Mike and I were informed about his discharge and the lawsuit when contacted by the hospital. But it seemed my mother-in-law was completely unaware. John, what are you talking about? It's not what it looks like. It wasn't cheating, you see. As my father-in-law scrambled to explain, I decided to add fuel to the fire. What was it again, you said? My wife is getting old. So she's not interested in that sort of thing anymore, was that it? What? Her face twisted into a furious glare directed at my father-in-law. I had heard from Mike before that my mother-in-law, who had her children relatively early, hates being criticized for her age more than anything. My father-in-law's face turned pale as he tried to calm her down. Dad, Mom, what's going on here? Just then, Mike arrived home, right on cue. I texted him as soon as his parents showed up. Seeing Mike, my parents-in-law started pleading with him. Mike, come back home. Forget about this nasty woman. I can introduce you to young and beautiful women. Father. Did you go to that place again? Reacting to my father-in-law's words, my mother-in-law raised her voice shrilly. No, it's not like that. Mike, listen. Your father has been cheating. I told you, it wasn't cheating. Watching this unfold, Mike's gaze was indifferent. Even through the intercom, it was clear. As the argument escalated, my parents-in-law suddenly changed their tone, trying to coax Mike with sweet words. Just come back for now, okay? You'll find someone good in no time, Mike. That's right. Don't worry. Their intention to turn Mike into their personal ATM was glaringly obvious. Mike responded with a smile, which momentarily softened my parents-in-law's expressions. However, they were about to be utterly devastated. Can't you just stop? I've said we're cutting ties. Don't say such convenient things after hurting the person I love. Just then, a police car pulled up in front of our house. Mike greeted the officer with a smile. Excuse me, are you the one who called us? Yes, sorry, but these people have been loitering in front of our house and causing a disturbance in the neighborhood. We've received similar reports from other neighbors. Come on, you can't be causing trouble like this. The officer looked at my parents-in-law, who stood there, faces white as sheets. Mike ignored them, greeted the officer, and came inside. The police will handle it from here. Sorry for the trouble, especially when you were at work. Nothing is more important than your safety. Mike's words made him look so admirable to me. I hugged him tightly. A few minutes later, the officer informed us through the intercom that my parents-in-law had left. We thanked the officer. Whether it was the scolding from the officer or not, my parents-in-law never came to our house again. Eventually, my father-in-law couldn't return to his previous hospital and had to undergo surgery at a public hospital. To pay for the surgery, they had to sell their house, now living in a tiny room together. The money left from the sale, after paying for the surgery, vanished as compensation to the nurse and the hospital. Once, they tried to contact us through a relative, but we had already explained the situation to that relative, who blocked them on our behalf. It seems they thought it would be okay, as long as they didn't come to our house. We heard they've been trying to contact us by any means possible. After we sent a cease and desist through a lawyer, we've had no further trouble and have been relieved. Interestingly, Mike and I were quite popular among the neighbors and the local community. Unlike my parents-in-law, who lived practically ostracized by their community until they sold their house. After selling their house, my in-laws were rejected by landlords of nearby apartments, forcing them to leave the area where they had lived for so long. I heard from relatives that, having run out of money, my in-laws started working to support themselves. However, my mother-in-law, who had never worked before and with her stubborn personality, couldn't keep a job for long. This situation reportedly worsened their marital relationship. As for us, we recently found out that I'm pregnant. While we were troubled by my in-laws, the thought of having children seemed distant. But now that it's happening, we feel an indescribable love. Mike feels the same, smiling joyfully every day as he gently touches my belly. Of course, we have no plans to inform my in-laws. Keeping them from seeing their much-desired grandchild's growth feels like the ultimate revenge. Mike's business is thriving, with nearly 100 employees now. With an increasing number of clients, we're getting busier. I've decided to resign from my job following the birth. This was the plan ever since Mike started his company. I intend to help with his work. We want to grow the company together as a couple. Lately, our hobby is knitting. On our days off, we knit items for our child together. I'm working on a yellow hat, while Mike is knitting a blue one. And these peaceful moments are incredibly joyful. I'd be happy if it's a girl. I'm happy either way. Me too, of course. But, when she grows up and gets married. I'm already getting teary. Just the thought brought tears to Mike's eyes, which made me laugh as I patted his head. The sky is so blue. How about the name Hope? What a coincidence, I was thinking the same. We shared a smile, hoping these happy days would last forever. I thought this as I continued knitting.